Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the pre-show before we get to the final installment of the Halloween Tree book study. So, really cool. Excited to have done this, and it's going to be fun tonight to get through the rest of it. But I do have a pre-show for you, and a little bit of a treat here. So, I'll welcome the chat in a second, and then I'll bring a guest in, because I have a guest tonight. I was thinking that since, as I've mentioned on the channel before, that I am going to take November, at least starting in November anyway, I'm scaling back. I'm not going to be doing these regular live streams on Tuesdays and Thursdays every night, every week on the Professor Geek channel. Doesn't mean that Professor Geek's going anywhere. I'll still post videos. I still might pop up with the odd impromptu live stream here and there. But I'm going to use all the time, that scheduled time, to develop my Catholic Bible Geek channel, which I just need time to do. So that's what I'll be doing. But since I'm going to be stepping back from the regular streams like this, I realized I wanted to tie up a couple of loose ends, and one of them was the Inspiration of Heroes series that I started months back by now, probably 4 or 5 months back now, I guess, or something. I don't know. And I had a list of people that I was going to bring in to do those with, and they were really popular. Everybody really seemed to take to them and like them. I didn't think they'd be that popular because I figured the person I was interviewing would really like it, and maybe that person's mom or wife would really like it or something. But other than that, I did. But the chat really liked it. They really liked it. So we did. I think Big Al was my first one. I think Sound Engraver was a guest. Of course, Fan Man, and I always wanted to. Troy and Annette were on the list there as well to do for that Inspiration of Heroes. And I realized that as I was tying this, going to fade back a little bit from the Professor Geek channel, I didn't want to leave those undone. So tonight for the pre-show, I'm going to welcome you guys in a second, and then we'll start the proper pre-show, which is going to be Mr. Troy Pacelli, our very own Klingon cleric, and his Inspiration for Heroes stream, Inspiration of Heroes. So that'll be fun. We'll get to that in just a moment, but let me welcome the chat first, so that when I bring him in, we can just move right into that segment, so that I can then cut that out and make it its own proper video with images of the heroes and everything like that he talks about. So I did set this stream up last night at some point, maybe yesterday, I don't know. It was early for me, but I noticed that Mr. Troy Pacelli himself was first comment. So congratulations, Troy. And Nanette was second. Troy screen captured that photographic evidence and put it on the Professor Geek Facebook group. So congrats to them. Here tonight, I did see Matthew Flynn is the first one. So welcome, Matthew. Great to have you. And Nanette, of course. Don't worry, Nanette. I remembered you were there. Daniel Heron, dropping little biblical references there. I am the comment that I am. Daniel Heron, you scare me a little bit. He left me a what seems to be a genuine compliment on the Professor Geek Facebook group. But knowing Daniel Heron, I'm waiting for that second shoe to drop. Because he said when I put this video there posted, and I said, pre-show started at 9. He said, "This is the bestest pre-show on YouTube." And I thought, where's the sarcasm? Where's it coming? Where's this? It's going to get there, but you didn't bring it. So thank you for the genuine compliment, but I'm still waiting for that shoe to drop. Welcome, Sir Torin Clergain. Welcome to you. Welcome. Sound Engraver's with us. Welcome, Sound Engraver. Urban Verse. Hello, Urban Verse. Good to see you around again. All right, and we've got a lot more people watching. These are just the people active in the chat, but we have quite a few people watching, and I think, if my YouTube is correct there, we got the same amount watching as thumbs up. But do make sure to hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. Tom Spiegel fell asleep and missed the Wolfman stream. Oh, yeah. Wolfman Media did a stream earlier today. I know I'm always driving and running errands and whatnot during the day, or I have Alyssa and stuff, so I can't catch it. But I try and drop in and say hi. But, yeah, he had a good stream, it seems like. So, all right. Well, without further ado, let us bring in our guest now. And so to this Inspiration of Heroes stream for the night, let me welcome our Klingon cleric himself, Mr. Troy Pacelli. Welcome, Troy.
Hi, y'all. How you doing?
Good. And I'm glad you agreed to do this, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to say here, because I have to say, we've got a great community with the Professor Geek extended universe, as I like to call it. But we do have a great community, and on the Facebook group as well, and all the different channels and everything like that. And we've met a lot of great people, probably a lot of really great people. But I have to say, Troy is somebody that I'm really interested in hearing about your heroes and the ones that inspire you, because Troy kind of sticks out a little bit. Everybody sticks out in their own way. But the way that Troy sticks out is that he's just so genuine. It's kind of like when Jesus is calling his disciples, and Philip goes and gets Nathaniel and says, "Hey, we found the Messiah." And Nathaniel's like, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" And then Jesus sees Nathaniel, and he says, right on seeing Nathaniel, he said, "Here is a man in whom there is no guile." And what he means is like Nathaniel is going to tell you like it is. He's not going to put on any false faces. That's Troy. Troy is not false. I don't mean that he's rude or anything, but I mean that, like, I've never heard Troy trash anybody behind their back. Troy is just what you see, what you get. You're so helpful with the group and all these kinds of things and doing everything. So I'm really curious to know. I know you're really into Klingons, and I'm excited to hear about that. But I'm curious to hear about the heroes that shaped you. Did you want to start with Star Trek, or did you want to just start with something else and build up to that?
Actually, I was going to say it's kind of funny because I do feel like the Klingon thing is closer to the end of the journey.
Okay,
than
sure.
the beginning. So yeah, I actually think my journey is going to be kind of different than not only than many of the stories that you would get from others in the group, but I think different than what you're going to be expecting, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
With you. I didn't give you too many tips or let you know in advance where I was going with this, so I'll just kind of hit you with it and kind of surprise you.
Well, I figured it was a live stream, and I'll put the images in later, so I didn't have to have them beforehand. But let me quickly, I forgot to intro this, but I want you to turn it over to you here in a second.
Sure.
But for those who are new to the series, basically what the idea of this inspiration of heroes, is that's what my channel is built on. It's built on respecting our mythologies, our fictional heroes, because they do serve as our society's mythology, and they affect us on a cultural level, but also on a personal, psychological level. So the idea behind this series was to interview some people that are friends of the channel and whatnot, and find out their own personal journeys with these heroes and how they inspire them personally and so forth, and get some more viewpoints rather than just my own. So having said that, take it away, Troy.
So it's when you first asked me to do this, they say introspection changes the experience, but it does force you to look into yourself and go, wow, what was my journey? Where did it start? And it's not like, it's not like bullet points, it's a little bit messier than that. And I kind of had to weed through it. But I think if I was going to start with something to start it out with, it starts little Troy back in the early 70s watching cartoons. And it starts with Hanna-Barbera. And I'm going to point. I'm going to point to the Three Musketeers, the Hanna-Barbera version of the Three Musketeers. Yeah, see, you got to think about that.
Yeah,
I bet a lot of people in the stream are going to even be taxed. You might have to do a little Googling to find it. Maybe. But I bet if Aged Boomer's listening, he knows what I'm talking about. And those Three Musketeers, all for one and one for all. Man, that kind of got me going. And boy, did I want to be D'Artagnan. Although, to be honest with you, I know I was probably more like Thule. He's a character specific to Hanna-Barbera. You'll find him out when you Google him. The little kid that ran around after them. Okay, just to help you out. But I loved.
I was just gonna say that's interesting because D'Artagnan is kind of a Robin-like character, the younger person who gets to hang out with the big three heroes, and if they added a separate one, that's interesting. But go ahead.
Well, he wasn't really a musketeer. He was just a kid who idolized him and ran around. And it was Hanna-Barbera, so it was the audience, point of view character, that I could relate to. So running around with the wooden sword or whatever was not beyond me, but then getting my friends together in grade school, all for one and one for all, and this idea of camaraderie and the idea that heroism was built on usually not just the one person, but the one person who pulls everyone together. You're stronger together than you are separately, which, kind of leads to the whole King Arthur, Knights of the Round Table, chivalry. I just ate up the whole chivalry concept, which in the 70s probably wasn't that big a thing that kids were focused on. I mean, outside of something like Three Musketeers, that was something older or something yet to come. I was kind of in a trough for that kind of thing, but I definitely did get into that whole idea of putting others ahead of yourself. There was a greater calling for a hero and what that meant. And especially that it didn't require special superpowers to decide to do what was right. But of course, growing up in the 70s, who were the more common heroes? Batman 66, right?
Yeah.
Which was, looking back on it, we know it was a farce, right? It was meant to be comical, tongue in cheek.
Theater of the
But
absurd. Yeah.
yeah, but when you're a kid, that's absolutely Batman, So buckle up before you drive away and follow the rules of the road and all that stuff that seems goofy in an adventure, superhero story. Absolutely, I took to heart and took it literally. So it was not it was not a farce to me. And if those messages were intended to teach something to kids, they found fertile ground with a young Troy, getting a little older, 1978, Superman. Yes. Oh man, I just would get goosebumps. And when he's doing that interview with I was just old enough to understand that interview he's doing with Lois, there's flirting going on there, and there's
how to flirt like Superman.
I'm starting to see the adult side of it.
No, I don't have a girlfriend, but if I do, Lois, you'll be the first to know about it.
Yeah. And I definitely did blush with the whole underwear thing, sitting there watching that with my mom. That was, wow. It's like, yeah. I was just old enough to be embarrassed by that. But what stood out was when he said, I stand for truth, justice, and the American way.
Yes.
And he meant it. I was just old enough to get, this is not a joke like it might have been with Adam West.
Yeah.
And then when she doesn't believe it, he goes, I never lie. And he's 100% genuine. And boy, tell me what kid hears Superman doesn't lie and go,
yeah.
Wow.
I got some work to do.
Yeah. So it also made me realize being a hero means having that higher calling, that even when I decide to do what's right, every day's going to make me have to look at myself again and again and again and again. So I was, I got into the Boy Scouts and I took that very seriously.
No, really, I didn't know you were a Boy Scout.
Oh yeah, I was in the Boy. That's when being a Boy Scout not only meant something, but there wasn't this, stigma behind it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Heck, I was an altar boy too. I went to a Catholic grade school.
Oh, that's right. You told me that once.
Yeah. So I was an altar boy. I was a Boy Scout, and those two decisions came from. It came from two things. It came from me wanting to pursue. I wasn't sure what path, but I'm sure one of those two things was going to lead me on the path I wanted to go. And it came from my mother wanting to push me to be more extroverted. I by nature wanted to be more introverted, and she'd be like, I want you to go into Boy Scouts. I want you to be social. I want you to get up there and serve in the church. And my father was an altar boy, so you can be an altar boy too. And it taught me how to get in front of people and not be ashamed and not think twice about, I wouldn't be sitting here talking, and doing the live streams and the stuff that I do if it weren't for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the way I saw it, down the path of the Boy Scouts led to enlisting in the Marines. That's where I thought that was going to go.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And on the altar boy side, I thought about being a priest. And really? that one wow. was very, very close. In 8th grade, the Monsignor, I guess, the whoever the head priest was, said, hey, you really do a great job. Have you ever thought about the priesthood? I said, it's funny you mention that, because I have thought about it. He goes, look, I'm not going to make this an absolute, I'm not going to pressure you or anything, but I'm going to offer you that if you do really want to at least think about it, no obligation to be a priest, but if you're going to think about it, I would be willing to help in whatever way I need to see about paying your way to Quigley Seminary here in Illinois. And I seriously considered it. And I talked it over with my mom, And I laid out exactly what I was just saying, Marines or priesthood, and she was not fired up about either of those options, as you would expect of a mother, right?
There's not a great chance for grandchildren from either of those options.
That's exactly what she was thinking. Exactly right. And so she really wanted to steer me away from both. And she made a very impassioned case against the Marine Corps because she grew up in the Vietnam era. She had friends go off to Vietnam, not come back. Grandma, when she heard about it, oh my gosh, World War II, I got all the stories from her. So I was like, oh gosh, and it was just that whole idea that, I feel like I want to do this thing, but I don't want to let them down either. They'd be really disappointed in me if I did this thing. On the priesthood side, both grandma and mom were like, yeah, even though he says you'd be under no obligation, you'd feel an obligation. If you take him up on, having your education paid for, you'd feel like you have to go through this thing. And you don't want to make that commitment feeling any kind of obligation. That wouldn't be right. That's how my grandmother put it. My mother was more like, oh no, you're going to discover girls and you're not going to ever want to be a priest.
How old were
she
you?
Wasn't wrong.
How old were you? How old were you?
I was 8th grade, so I was getting ready to go into high school.
Oh, yeah, you're on the cusp of that, if not already.
And I kind of noticed girls. I kind of understood that, but didn't quite fully get the implications of that. So yeah, I didn't end up going that route. But the other thing that happened though in 8th grade that brought me back to the beginning, the Knights of the Round Table, the Three Musketeers, was I was in band at the time, and our band leader told us about an opportunity to audition for a local musical. They needed kids specifically, grade school age kids that played instruments to be in the chorus of The Music Man at the Candlelight Dinner Playhouse. And this was a big deal because this was the first time I auditioned for anything. And it was for professional theater. So when I did get the role, I became a thespian and got my card and everything. I was a professional actor,
so it was like repertory or guild or anything, or
yeah, it was local guild, and it wasn't
community theater or anything. It
wasn't community theater. Okay. This was professional dinner theater. It was the Candlelight Dinner Playhouse in Summit. It's not there anymore, but it was, like I said, it was the dinner theater that I was performing in. On the other side, the actual theater was playing The Man of La Mancha.
Oh, nice.
And so it gave me the opportunity to be exposed to that play, and I ended up seeing it, and I read the play, and of course I saw the film with Peter O'Toole and Sophia Loren. Remember Noticing Girls, right?
That's right.
But my goodness, bringing me right back to that conviction about what it means to be a knight. And I'm just old enough to start to understand this Quixotic concept of it doesn't really matter what's real. It's really the heart more than the what's going on the outside. He thinks he's fighting dragons and giants, and he's just a crazy man tilting at windmills.
Yeah,
but it doesn't matter because it was his heart.
Exactly. Yeah, and
that heart is what directly impacted the people around him and changed their lives. They began to see themselves the way he saw them. This idea of let me see myself the way you see me, was incredibly impactful. I just noticed that even as I'm stopping to think and I put my fingers to my lips, it's the exact same mannerisms as Christopher Reeve in Superman.
Yep. Nice.
So that's that. Those were the foundations just as I was going into high school that really solidified there, that, okay, so maybe I'm not going to be a Marine. Maybe I'm not going to be a priest, but I'm also never going to be a superhero. I'm not going to be Superman. I'm not going to be Batman, but there are things that I can do. I can be the Quixotic hero. I can envision myself that way and live that way and choose to represent something. The honor, the way I treat a woman, that whole pure and chaste from afar thing, it's I'm a gentleman.
Courtly love.
Exactly. The way grandma always said, you everything about being a gentleman, right? So as I started dating and started to behave that way, my expectation was I was going to find someone that was going to respond to that, and then I'd know I had the right one. And I'll be honest with you, I got my heart broken a couple times simply because they weren't looking for a gentleman. They were looking for something else.
They always want the bad boy.
Exactly. And that bugged me so much. That's another story for another stream, I think. But there was, I started to think, am I on the right track? Maybe I should have been more of a jerk, maybe I should. But
as long as you're on this, I just want to interject once. I was recently watching the Wonder Woman animated film again from 2009, which is so great.
Oh yeah.
And he's taking her to the bar. He's trying to get her drunk, basically.
Yeah.
But she tells him about her mother, Hippolyta, and Zeus back in the day. And he's like, figures. He said, if the god of dependability hit on her, she'd be like, you're really nice, but I just think of you as a friend.
Yeah, exactly. And that's and that happened to me a couple times. And it was like, man, I guess, I felt like I wasn't being alpha enough, but I'm like, but no, that wouldn't be being a gentleman, right? And eventually I found someone who was like, wow, you really take this kind of thing seriously. I ran into the problem of I was always, doing real well with the girl's parents, and their family, but then she'd lose
which drove them away more.
I guess, exactly. That's what my mom said too. She's like, yeah, well, if the parents like you, then, but she wasn't jaded enough to say, sure, yeah, you're going too far. She's like, nope, you're on the right track.
There aren't many of them out there that like the good guy, but they are there. They are there.
Yeah, just stick with
the
it.
The special ones.
Exactly. And eventually I got there, obviously. But and you'll talk to her more about her journey and you'll get her side of it, I would imagine. But
her great work of charity and marrying you.
Exactly. Yeah, that's how I see it anyway. That's for sure. But I just decided that honor was the way. So all through high school and even into college, I studied the Bushido Code.
I've seen you posting about that on Facebook.
Yeah,
you studied it.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, not formally, but informally, and I'd read about it, the 7 virtues and so forth. And the Arthurian chivalric ideal.
Code of the Round Table.
Yeah, a little bothered that history doesn't really match up with legend, but that didn't matter to me. I was going to live the legend as much as possible.
Yeah.
And then only in high school when I met my buddy Otto, he introduced me to Star Trek. Star Trek wasn't even a thing I was interested in until it was starting to come out in the first movie, and I found the first movie boring. But then he took me to my first Star Trek convention, and I really gravitated towards the Klingons, right?
Nice.
Because
the code, right?
Yeah, this was just on the cusp of Next Gen coming out and completely taking them from being the villains to being the misunderstood anti-heroes kind of thing. And when you start digging into it, I immediately was like, oh, I saw the Bushido Code there. Yeah, these are samurai. These aren't, just pirates,
Yeah.
And even pirates tend to be romanticized, right? In fiction, that they have a code and everything. And, that's more legend than reality. But this whole idea that any group of adventurers has to have at least their code amongst themselves to defend each other. But absolutely this code of honor and how honor is more important than life, because really, what is a man but his word and his reputation? What good does it do to survive and have nobody have any faith in you? Better to die the man you want to be than to live as a man you can't respect. That was a decision that I came to, And yeah, I think that that kind of sums it up. That takes almost 50 years and boils it down into a half hour. Oh my gosh.
Well, I'm going to ask you some more specific
Sure.
questions about Klingons in a
Please
second here, but let me check in with the chat because I've seen a lot of activity going on here. I'll go back to the beginning here. Some people were saying good job on your choices there. That's some obscure reference, the Hanna-Barbera Three Musketeers.
I like Sir Torrin Clegane is actually singing the score of Man of La Mancha in his head.
Oh, it's so good.
It,
I know.
Right?
I love it. I love it. In fact, it's just a funny story. I'll get back to the chat here in a second.
Sure.
A friend of mine has a Filk band. You know what Filk is. You go to the cons.
I do.
And stuff
I
like
go
that.
to the cons, yeah.
So they're called the Boogie Nights, and they take pop songs. Yeah, Boogie Knights. They take pop songs and set them to either Star Trek or fiction or whatever.
Sure.
And they have La Bamba. Instead of La Bamba, it's the Men of La Mancha. And it goes through and talks about my helmet's enchanted. It's made of gold and makes a nifty shaving bowl. All this kind of stuff. And but the one you were talking about being a gentleman and everything, and the most hilarious verse they have is their I defend lots of maidens. Yeah, I know that they're hookers. Don't tell no one. I'm having fun. I'm no moron.
Yeah, exactly.
They're so clever. That's hilarious. But no, I just had to get in there. I see Soundagraver says it's fascinating to hear you all have childhood heroes outside Narnia and I never grew up with heroes. It was Hanna-Barbera, Flintstones, Jetsons, things like that. Yeah, and Soundagraver talked about it on her inspiration of heroes too. Getting into later, or she'd have experience of Mario. Yeah, and Dixie Kong, I remember that too on her. So, and I'm going to put all of these inspirational heroes in one playlist if I don't already have them there, especially when I cut this out and make it its own. So we'll have that so people can go and get all of the information. It's pretty good there. Saw some other people. Oh yeah, Arcade Burns talking about Captain N and the Game Master. I love that. Captain N, the Game Master, Legend of Zelda. Yeah, Captain N was a great cartoon. More people need to know about that. It was so much fun. Pirates of Dark Water. That's good, Arcade Fire. Yeah, I love that too. That was some good old classic cartoon stuff. Talk about romanticizing pirates and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we got some more 3 cheers for the gentleman. Arcade Burns, I did the gentleman thing in high school. I think me looking the other way and blocking the view of a girl getting her shirt on helped start the stupid rumor I was not into ladies. Good guys have it rough, man. They really do. They really do.
No, absolutely true. And yeah, I've run into that many times. That's even as an adult. Nope, you're my buddy's wife, and you don't even exist from the neck down. You're like my sister. I don't even want to think about that. And they'll look at me like you're weird, but never really in a bad way,
Yeah, but that's heroic. That's an aspirational heroic trait, to not fall into that womanizing kind of behavior or whatever, and not putting that in a way of like a social justice kind of angle that would be on it nowadays, but not just basic chivalry, as you said. Yeah.
Well, and that's why when you make the comparison to today, when people talk about the Pence rule, mm-hmm. I heard that and I'm like, yeah, I've lived by that all my life. I mean, mm-hmm. it doesn't require you to, be afraid to run afoul of, modern day, gotchas or something. Mm-hmm. It's just, this is, you care about your reputation and how you reflect on your wife and how you reflect on, men in general, so there is a higher calling, and mm-hmm. that's not about being sexist, and it's not about, even living in fear. It's just doing what's right.
It's about the difference in complementarity of the sexes, not the everything's the same. Yeah.
And some people just can't accept that there isn't some negative aspect to that. Well, mm-hmm. you're sexist and you don't want women to have opportunities that men have. No, that has nothing to do with it. It just means that I'm going to make sure that there's somebody else there and she always feels safe. What's wrong with mm-hmm. that? You can't me too and then be upset because I was already thinking along those lines and respecting those boundaries,
Yeah, very true. So you when you discovered Klingons, it sounds like that kind of took a lot of obviously the Code of Bushido, but also a lot of the things that you've been interested in, even all the way back to the Three Musketeers, because the Klingons are a community. They are about a tribe or whatever. So it just kind of distilled all of that, and that stuck with you to this day. I mean, Klingon culture still and fandom is still a big part of your life. I know. Are there any specific characters in the Klingon fictions that stuck out to you, or is it just the whole thing?
Yeah, see that's where it gets kind of difficult, especially when you're talking about moving cannons, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
so obviously the big three, Kor, Koloth, and Kang stand out. They were the villains, but then they kind of get retroactively looked at as they were kind of misunderstood.
Mhm.
They were the heroes in their own respect, and when you start to see it, from a different point of view, you realize, oh, okay, yeah, maybe they're not what I thought they were.
Mhm.
And they're respected as there's a Klingon saying there are no old warriors. The idea is, just like among the Spartans, for
Mhm.
example, you if you're a soldier, all men are soldiers, and soldiers die young. And if you don't die young, either you're a coward or you're just a really, really good soldier. And that's a
Mhm.
hard dichotomy, right? I mean,
Sure.
I what there's the line, what's wrong with not having died? I have not yet found a superior, adversary,
Mhm.
and that's why these three characters from the original series are still around. They're called Dar Masters. That means they
Oh,
are
okay.
such high warriors that they keep going on quests. They haven't retired, and they've never found something that's stopped them, that's sent
No,
them on to. Go
they're
ahead.
still around in the next gen age from the original series. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they are. Well, there's two things that come up. So first, there's about an 80-year gap, right?
Mhm.
And then secondly, you get the impression that longevity is in the future. We're talking 300-400 years in the future.
Sure.
Human lifespans get longer, so do
Mhm.
Klingons and so forth. Plus they go in, I could get into, we're getting off topic, but Klingons are just more robust. They
Mhm.
don't get sick as easily.
Sure.
So if they don't get killed, they'll live longer,
Mhm.
so yeah, the idea that they're literally just a generation, even though that generation is almost 80 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're still around. They're old,
Okay.
but they're still, as long as you're able to stand and pick up a left, you are still a warrior,
Yeah. Gotcha. So Worf wasn't like a big standout for you. It was just kind of the culture in general because he's the one everybody mentions.
That's the thing, from a truly Klingon standpoint, when you're really getting into it, you're seeing it through the point of view of somebody who grew up among humans. He's a Klingon,
That's true. That's true. He
but he
grew up
grew
among
up
humans,
among
though.
humans. And so,
Yeah.
in a way, he sees Klingons through a very idealized eye, too,
Mhm.
and he's very naive about many things. And so it causes him to wrestle with his understanding of Klingon culture, which is a great way for, people that really want to dig into the Klingon culture to look at it. But always
Mhm.
remember that what he's talking about is kind of from the point of view of someone who didn't grow up actually in the Klingon culture. He grew up in books and holographic stories and movies and stuff like that. When he talks to his brother, though, or when Riker talks to the first officer on the Klingon ship, you see it from the point of view of someone who actually grew up in it. And it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, no, it's not like you think, and
Yeah.
sometimes it can be disillusioning, but sometimes it's more hardcore than even Worf realized.
Sure.
So,
Is there any parallel? And I don't know because I mean I've watched a little bit
mhm.
of Next Gen here and there. It's not my my thing like it is yours. Is there any parallel between Worf coming from another race with those abilities from that race or longevity or robustness or
Mhm.
anything, growing up among humans? Is there any parallel between that and like a Superman? Growing up amongst us, identifying as one of us, working with us to save us with those abilities, or is Worf still more identifying as Klingon?
I think you could see it that way. But the difference, the big difference with Superman, right, is that he identifies as human first, even
Yeah,
though
yeah.
he will go back and research and learn about his Kryptonian heritage. He really sees himself as Clark Kent.
Mhm.
I think the better example of parallel, it's another Star Trek comparison, but I think when they were going about it with Worf, they were looking at Worf kind of like they did with Spock in the original series,
Oh,
a
okay.
character out of his own race, kind of
Because
trying to find his place.
he was
So
half human too. Yeah.
Right. Well,
or
and
literally, he
although
was half human. Yeah, he's
Worf
Worf's all.
was fully Klingon, but raised by humans, and humans, they were actually Russians, in fact. So
Oh,
there's
really?
a
I didn't know that. Wow,
yeah,
interesting.
they were I'm drawing a Rashenko was their last name. So he
Okay.
grew up in Russia, basically.
Hmm.
So it's a shame that he doesn't have that accent, but
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
we assume he has a Klingon accent. Is what he actually has.
Yeah.
But he would have spoken Klingon fluently as a child, but
Hmm.
then he'd have to keep it. You lose that if you don't continue to read books in Klingon, listen to Klingon music, which he did.
Hmm.
And what he was reading was oftentimes, our equivalent of the Arthurian legends and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I guess you're right. I probably should have seen more of myself in Worf now that I look back on it. But yeah, so that's where I am on Worf. He's
Yeah.
yeah,
Sure.
he's a good Klingon, but he's probably not the perfect example if you're really trying to emulate actual Klingon culture.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. I
why I'm
understand.
doing the channel that I am, because I am going to do my best to show Klingon culture from the Klingon, growing up on Klotnos point of view.
Hmm.
And yes, I will reference Worf, but you know
Yeah. Well, that brings me to the last thing I had to ask you about your channel. You mentioned to me one time you're calling yourself the Klingon cleric, but in Klingon culture, as it's written, there is no place for a cleric, right? So you're bringing that added perspective to it, right? Is that
Actually, that's not entirely true. That's a
okay?
misconception that a lot of humans would have, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So,
Okay.
cleric is a term that comes from Star Trek. It's shown up in several episodes in The Next Generation, but they also brought it into Star Trek Discovery. It's still part of that canon as well. This idea that there's a monastery on the
Hmm.
planet Borath where it's more like a monastery like you'd find in Tibet,
Okay.
that kind of a monastery where you
Sure.
go to meditate, to learn, you know, the focus on the warrior way, the way of Kalesh,
Hmm.
Kalesh being their messianic
I remember that. Yeah.
representation. A very, very, very definite uh, Jesus parallels there, even the coming back from the dead kind of
Sure.
concept that he would return and everything. More like a warrior Jesus, more like what the Jews might have been expecting in their
Yeah.
Messiah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. The
know,
political
uh,
messiah.
and as a Christian, I've always thought of that too. I'm like, well, if Jesus, is going to unify us to the Father, right? He's going to show up on other planets in
Hmm.
kind of a different way, right? Maybe
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
Jesus to the Klingons, right?
And a lot of
So
science fiction does that. Yeah. Yeah.
so there definitely was shown what the clerics of Borath looked like. My uniform is made directly from that episode.
Oh, cool.
Um, and yeah, so I really dig into that, and that's what I'm trying to portray. So obviously there's a language barrier there too. Cleric is a human word. Maybe it's not the best translation. I use Laldan Shof Chokwi, which means, teacher of the way, teacher of the
Not as
uh,
catchy for a YouTube channel name, though, right?
and of course I'll pepper my channel with and well, you saw my first video. It's a cooking
Hmm.
video where
Yeah.
I do
Great
certainly
one.
sew in, and I don't really put any translations. You kind of have to figure it out from context.
Hmm.
But I'm sure if someone were to ask in the at 5 minutes 32 seconds, what does that mean? I'll tell them. I'll translate if they need me to. Um,
Nice.
but I happen to be of the mind that culture goes hand in hand with food and
Hmm.
language and history. Those
Yeah.
things are intimately part of culture. So, if I'm going to teach about Klingon culture, I'm going to have to teach about food, and I'm going to have to
Hmm.
teach about history, and I'm going to have to teach about traditions. My next video, which I'm hoping to get out, I may not make it out by the end of the month, but if I can, it's going to be about the the Klingon holiday of Chitlop, which would be kind of like a Veterans Day Memorial Day,
Hmm.
Armed Services Day for us.
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
kind of rolled up into one. And just like any other Klingon holiday, it just means a lot of food and drinking and
Hmm.
singing and celebrating and telling stories.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Just checking in with the chat here. Matthew Flynn also enjoyed Captain N growing up. Melissa Harris is calling for a King Arthur book study. That's something I'll probably do on this Catholic Bible Geek channel. Maybe even Tolkien's translation
Mallory.
of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, or Mallory. But Steinbeck, I think, was it Steinbeck, did a great translation of the Arthurian legend.
Really?
Tolkien did, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, of course. And but yeah, look for the CBG channel. That'll come into that definitely.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
so
all up for that.
yeah, definitely excited about that. Yeah, and I'll need somebody that knows, some of the stuff there. I think that's it there. All right, I just wanted to check in with the chat there. So if well, I guess in closing, then, just wrapping things up, what if someone asked you what if to put it like succinctly in a paragraph or whatever, what have heroes done for you in your life? How can you see, or how can you explain the man you've become today because of certain heroes? Like, could you say, because of Superman, I'm a gentleman. Because of this, I'm a that. I know they all kind of run together, but
yeah, I would say because of all of them, I have had to evaluate what kind of man I want to be and not what kind of man I want to appear to be. What kind of a man do I have to look in the mirror at when there's no one else around?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to be. And I'll tell you what, it's very liberating.
Mm-hmm.
I can just be myself. And when someone like you started out, I felt kind of flattered, the things that you said about me. But
sure.
I have to believe that if you see those things, they must be there, because I just don't have the energy to pretend to be something other than, that. It's what I've cultivated in myself all these years. And it was because of those inspirations.
Mm-hmm.
So when I hear somebody, saying these things are unrealistic, I kind of feel sorry for them.
Yeah, right.
There was, and I don't know if Aged Boomer wants to talk about this on one of our Sundays, but the writer or the showrunner for The Boys just recently came out and said how terrible superheroes are for kids growing up, because it sends them the wrong message that you should sit around and wait for someone to save you.
Wow.
No. You're absolutely getting the wrong message then.
Yeah.
The story is not, I need to wait for Superman to come and save me. It's, there are things about Superman that do not, the important things about Superman do not require superpowers. And I absolutely can and am expected to emulate them. That's why you always get stories about Superman where he loses his powers and he goes on to find ways to continue to do what he's going to do, because it has nothing to do with his superpowers. It has to do with who he is. Batman, who decided he talk about giving up your life for something. Batman's given up his life. He's living his life for another purpose, not for himself, but so that no one else will have to suffer the way a little kid in Crime Alley had to.
Yep, exactly.
That doesn't require any superpowers. It requires somebody to have the conviction to go out and do what he needs to do to make it happen.
It also doesn't mean devolving him into just some angry, brooding, vengeance striking Punisher.
Right. Because he'll always stop Robin and say, no, we don't use a gun. That's not our way. That's not what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So.
No,
I like what you said there, because it does, you talk about taking a step back and looking at yourself in the mirror. That's what heroes do. They encourage self-reflection and stopping. Don't just go out and seek your appetites or whatever. Do stop and do a little self-analysis. Do look at, because that's where values spring from, right? I mean, in a religious context, that's your examination of conscience, at the end of the day or whatever. How few people ever bother to do something like that today, and really gauge their actions, not based on how they make you feel, but how you are perceived by others. That's it's a big deal. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
And if you want to take this to a part 2 on the Catholic Bible Geek channel, I'd be happy to, continue the story into my conversion story.
Yeah, I probably will. I was thinking about that, actually. I'm glad you brought that up. Just like I have the inspiration of heroes on this channel, I'd like to do a series on the Catholic Bible Geek channel, which is conversion, inspiration, Christ, the ultimate hero, so conversion stories. definitely. So yeah, pencil you in for that. Definitely. I'd like to talk to a lot of people, and Sound Engraver too. Yes, you're in the chat there, and yeah, definitely. So that something we'll keep going. So anything else you'd like to throw out there or wrap up with before I take a break and get things ready for the book study?
Nope. As long as I gave you what you were looking for, I think we're all
Absolutely.
good.
That's great. Yeah, great. So I'm gonna um, cut that out and make it its own video. But thanks for coming on and doing that. And next week on Tuesday's pre-show, we'll have the Netters Network herself, Mrs. Nanette Pacelli. So
Yep.
that's
She's getting
exciting.
ready. She's already started her notes.
Nice, cool, excellent, excellent,
All right.
cool.
Thanks,
All right, well,
Professor.
thanks, Troy. And
Take
I'm
care.
gonna go ahead and black out the screen now, and I will be back with you folks by 10 p.m., maybe a little earlier, and I'll bring Al in. We'll do our book study.
Sounds good. Take care.
See ya. There we have my my very amateur skills at video production there. I actually took it from last time and uploaded it to StreamYard so it could play as an intro video. I'll play with that a lot more, especially with the Catholic Bible Geek channel, see what goes on with streams and whatnot. So welcome everyone thanks for hanging out during the pre-show. That was an awesome Inspiration of Heroes. That'll be cut out and added that playlist with Al and Sound Graver and everyone else. But now we're going to dig into the book study, the last installment of our Halloween Tree book study. Very excited to talk about this and dig in. But first up, let me welcome my trusty TA with me as always.
Hi, Big Al.
Big Al himself. Say hi, Big Al. So welcome, sir. Are you excited about this
really
wrapping up Halloween Tree?
To wrap up something. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like
I know.
It's over.
Well, it's not over because we're going to watch
That's
the
true.
animated
That's
version
true.
on Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday. And the Sound Engraver is going to come back and join us with that. So it'll be the old classic rewatch crew back for that. So yeah, that'll be fun. But yeah, so we're going to finish out the book today, and then Tuesday is the animated rewatch, which you can find anywhere. How hard was it to you to find when you're sailing those high seas?
I actually had found it early on because you had thought about it last year. So I actually got it off of, I believe Daily Motion had it in 2 parts, and I just spliced it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure it's out there in more complete form. I mean, mine's complete.
Yeah, I just have it. I purchased it on Amazon,
but it's it's the same length and all. It's just like so I had to splice it together.
I'll check into that. If I find it somewhere for free, and if it's a good quality on Daily Motion or something like that, maybe we'll all watch it through that, so that no one has to pay, and even the chat can watch it, and we can just be all on the same. So when it does click the end of that first part, we can all start the second part together. Maybe I'll do that. I'll look into that. But if not, it's available to rent anywhere or buy, usual places online.
Yep.
So there we go. Check in with the chat, see if anything's going on in particular before we jump right in. Everybody's talking to each other. I think we're good. I think we're good to go.
Mm-hmm. I totally did not listen to you, by the way, on your pre-show, because every time I've done that, my computer blows up 15 minutes before the show.
Oh, good. Oh, so you didn't hear all the horrible things we said about you. Good. Okay.
Well, I felt my heart breaking. Maybe that was it.
Not at all. All right. So we are going to dig in, and we are going to start tonight in chapter 15. That's where we left off at 14. And where we left off was the witches section. They've been, they blew like leaves to Britain, and they're in Britain, Europe. They're watching all of the witches being persecuted. They watched first the Romans, the ancient Romans, come and take over the Druids, and then the Christian religion take over the Romans. And now we're seeing the Christianity driving out witchcraft and witches of different villages and whatnot. And we closed on a pretty cool point, if you remember, where Henry Hank is the young man dressed up as a witch, and Mr. Moundshroud says at one point, anyone want to be a witch? Asked Moundshroud at last. Or said Henry Hank, shivering in his witch rags. No, not me. No fun, hey boy. No fun. The blooms flew them off through chars and smokes. They landed on an empty street in an open place in Paris. Their brooms fell over dead. Great way to end that chapter talking about that. And we drew out the point that one of the lessons Moundshroud is teaching them about Halloween is that it's a celebration in the midst of death, but it's not a celebration of the darkness. It's not a celebration of death. It's a celebration of the light within the darkness, or the life within the death, or the life that goes on, or trying to remember the life, or however you want to contextualize it. That's what we're doing here. So it's remember witches, but not because wouldn't it be cool to be a witch and cast spells on people and blah blah blah. No, because of the life, the light within the darkness, and that kind of idea. So now we come.
I just noticed you're slightly out of sync on the StreamYard thing. I don't know how it might be playing on YouTube.
I'm out of sync on StreamYard, not for me.
Yeah, me watching your voice kind of is like a nanosecond ahead of your mouth.
Okay, let me know in the chat, because I just brought somebody else in here. Sometimes it syncs up weirdly. If anybody's watching, or do we sound like we're talking over each other? Is there a delay? Is everything okay? RK Burns says I am out of sync. I mean, if the camera is just a problem, I could just cut the camera off. That's no big deal. But how's the audio? Do we sound?
To me, the audio sounds fine. Like I said, I was looking at my book, but I looked up at you and your mouth. It was like I was in a Godzilla film. It just didn't look right.
All right. Sound Engraver and Troy Pacelli said it looks all good on their side, audio and now StreamYard occasionally does like get glitched and then it catches up really quickly. So I'll just keep rolling with it unless it's a problem that persists. Okay. But yeah,
as long as it's on YouTube, all right. I don't look at you half the time anyway on this thing.
Why not? I do all this for you, Al. Get all prettied up for you, and come on.
Sure, you do.
All right. Oh no, Sound Engraver says, "Oh, you guys are out of sync." I'm getting mixed messages, folks. We're out of sync. Is everything look good? But now we're out of sync.
And the funny thing is, now you look fine on my end. You synced up on StreamYard.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, you're looking better now. Oh, earlier on you had a dubbing issue. Okay, I did see a desync, but it's not that bad now. Okay.
Yeah, you're good now.
All right. Apparently, I'm good now. Everybody says I'm fine. If you see it happen again, let me know, and I'll just stop the camera so we don't have to worry about it. And as long as audio is fine, as long as we're not delayed or anything like that, that's the big point. So, all right. Now, Al, you're pretty excited, or you told me anyway when we were talking earlier this week. You liked 15 and where they go into, and so I'll read the opening because I think it's cool, and then I'll let you talk about what you like about it. But well, now, boys, so they stopped in Paris. The brooms fell over dead. And Mr. Master said, well, now, boys, what should we do to scare the scarers, frighten the frighteners, shiver the shiverers, right? Those who drove out the witches, called Mound Shroud inside a cloud. What's bigger than demons and witches? Bigger gods? Bigger witches? Bigger churches, guessed Tom Skelton. Bless you, Tom, right. An idea gets big, yes? A religion gets big. How? With buildings large enough to cast shadows across an entire land. Build buildings you can see for 100 miles. Build one so tall and famous it has a hunchback in it. Ringing bells. So now, boys, help me build it, brick by brick, flying buttress by flying buttress. Let's build Notre Dame, shouted 8 boys. So what do you like about this?
Well, first of all, it evokes the Hunchback of Notre Dame, so that's always good. Be it the Disney musical or the more classic film versions, but I love the imagery of them running up the bricks, which we're not quite to yet in here. But that I thought was a fascinating visual imagery that I was seeing in my head. And straight up, I did watch the movie to kind of see it, and I like the way they portrayed it in the film too.
The old Lon Chaney one or the Disney one, or
no, I'm talking about the Halloween tree.
The Halloween
the
tree.
Boys, the boys running up the brick by brick, and they're afraid to put a foot out there, but when they do, the brick flies up and meets them, and then they all just start running up.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up because that's something significant here. So first, before they do start building it or running it up, they do see or hear in the sky the bell ringing, and it's Pipkin. Pipkin's a clapper on the bell. There's like he's gonna knock his brains out, because he. Go ahead.
Pipkin is abused from page 1 in this. Well, maybe not page 1, page 7 or whatever.
Gotcha.
Throughout this, I feel so sorry for Pipkin. It's like Ray Bradbury must have had a young friend that he did not like named Pipkin.
No, well, Pipkin.
And this was the book you decided to take it out on.
No, Pipkin. I mean, you're right. He does. Poor guy. His poor kid's going through a lot. But he's the spirit of boyhood, right? So what does that signify? And growing into manhood, the boy does have to die on some level, But can he die and come out the other side and be reborn, keeping the good stuff from boyhood, but maturing and whatnot? So that's kind of the story of it. And but you're right, poor Pipkin, all the things he has to go through. And he said, "Meet me in the air." So now they get what he means. He's in the air. And they start running up the bricks, like you said. And as they climb, the bricks magically appear. So they're not building and dragging stones and stacking them or anything. But as they climb, the bricks magically appear. And I think that's it's trying to picture how churches or religions or whatever. It's not like the Tower of Babel, which in the Bible was trying to rival God, but religion as a way of man reaching toward God. That, every religion is can be boiled down to that, man trying to reach toward God and understanding and to ultimately be like, or whatever, or holiness or whatever.
Yeah, to honor God, to build a beautiful place to honor him.
Yeah. So as you take those steps, what you step upon is built beneath you, in terms of religion like that. So I like that picture. You can go a little deeper with it, but it's interesting. They get to the top. Go ahead.
And the fact that they had to have faith for these bricks to fly up. It's a thing.
Good
it's
point.
like church is built on, faith.
Yeah, good point. It's like in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the leap of faith.
Yeah.
Pop, and then the invisible bridge is there, So yeah. Oh, I like that you brought that up. Now they get up to the top of the cathedral, and it's all completed except for what? You remember what was missing?
It was the bell tower, right?
The bell tower. I think the bell tower's there. In terms of ornamentation around the cathedral.
The gargoyles.
Yeah. The gargoyles are missing. And I love this idea because gargoyles, it kind of comes from an older tradition, but it goes right even through into cathedrals and Christian buildings and whatnot. But in olden times, the idea of a gargoyle was like an old demon, monster, witch, or whatever set on buildings to protect that building from other darker forces or whatever. We have the wonderful Gargoyles cartoon, if you guys remember that, taken from that. Melissa Harris says they're called wall chickens. That's what I missed. That's right. Did people put the wall chickens in? Because you never know who has to go adventure through there. Agent Boomer's watching this going, no, they're turkeys. Or whatever he says they are. But yeah, okay. So they have to provide gargoyles for the building, and I like that. Do you remember how they gather the gargoyles?
They started to whistle for them.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll read it here because I like the way it's uttered. Well, I just looked at the word uttered. Gargoyles, Mountrout uttered, and ululated and beautifully ribboned the word with its lizardy tongue. Gargoyles. Shall we put them on, boys? How? Why, I should think we could whistle them in place. Whistle for demons, boys. Whistle for fiends. Give a high, great tootling blow for beasts and ferocious fanged loomers of the dark. This is interesting. So they each whistle. They whistle as though they'd whistle for a dog or an animal. And then they see in chapter 16, the unemployed of all midnight Europe shivered in their stone sleep and came awake, which is to say that all of the old beasts, all of the old tales, all of the old nightmares, all of the old unused demons put by and witches left in the lurch, quaked at the call, reared at the whistle, trembled at the summons, and in dust devils of propulsion skimmed down the roads, fitted skies, buckshot through shaken trees, forded streams, swam rivers, pierced clouds, and arrived. What a beautiful poetic paragraph. I love Bradbury when he does it like this. He's just so...
Calm down.
I know. Deep breath. But he's just such a beautiful writer. And which is still to say that all the dead statues and idols and semigods and demigods of Europe, lying like a dreadful snow, all about abandoned in ruins, gave a blink and start, and came as salamanders on the road, or bats in skies, or dingoes in the brush. They flew, they galloped, they skittered, and they gather up to the cathedral and then take their poses and become these stone gargoyles. The picture of what he's doing here is you've got this great religion, Christianity, replacing all of the old pagan religions there. Now, critics of Catholicism will say that Catholicism it bastardized the gospel by allowing paganism to seep into its ranks. I think, and I used to think that too. I think that's a kind of a sort of a low. I don't want to say it. I don't mean mean, but it's kind of it's an uneducated viewpoint in terms of mythology and what happens, because like one of the things that brought me into Catholicism, for example, I talk about are like the communion of saints and how the archetypes that we've seen throughout history of different quote unquote gods are in the saints that have been going all the way back to the Hebrew Bible, so the Old Testament. So these archetypes, and that's the idea of the Christ story as well, that Chesterton talks about in The Everlasting Man, and Tolkien talks about when he's talking to Lewis and everything like that, the idea that that's the central myth that reverberates both forward and backwards in time. God put eternity in the hearts of man, that kind of idea. So that all of these old misguided, from a Christian standpoint. I'm definitely reading this into Bradbury's not going hardcore from a Christian standpoint, but I'm putting that spin on it. But, if you look at it from a Christian standpoint, all of those older misguided, pagan ways of worship or whatever, there's still some grain of truth in them. There's still something about them. And when you call them back and contextualize them, not literally just as gargoyles on the cathedral, but this is just a picture of how it's done, or what's going on. So that idea that there still is a place for them recontextualized within a different manner, within the truth or within the religion of the time or hold sway, or, from Ray Bradbury's perspective. So I like that picture. I like that picture of what's happening. There's still a place for the unemployed of all midnight Europe, Now as in all that excitement of calling forth the gargoyles, they lost track of Pipkin again. He's no longer in the clapper. He's no longer in the bell tower. And they whistle, they find it, but then they hear, so he says, Pipkin shouting, they ran downstairs. So they hear that small voice wailing, and it's wailing from down there. Tom went first, not looking down, spread eagling himself. Ralph followed. The rest inched along in line, so they're inching their way down. And here's Pip, and there he was, standing in a line directly under the outthrust stone mask, the bust, the head of a gargoyle. They looked up at the mighty, fine profile, that a great nub nose and unbearded cheek, that fuzzy cap of marbled hair. Pipkin, for crying! What you doing here? Called Tom. And here's a picture in the book that illustrates like how Pipkin would look as a gargoyle. So you can see it there. Really cool. I like that illustration. That's a neat way of doing that. And how does he talk? Do you remember? I love that. Do you remember how he talks to them?
Well, he couldn't move. He couldn't really move his mouth, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So he couldn't get breath or anything. So he has to wait for the wind to blow. And then as the wind blows through the gargoyle, it comes out as words through the rock.
One.
Yeah, exactly.
Question.
Exactly. One's a question, whispered Pip's voice again after a pause. Silence. More wind. Ada. The boys waited. Time. So it's be very specific and precise with your questions here, and don't waste them, because we gotta wait for that wind to blow. I like that idea. So I'm trying to find where it is he tells them. Well, we guess that was you, Pipkin. All right, yeah. So he was the dog. He tells them that. And now here, said the rain in the ear, the rain in the nose. Yeah, so it starts to rain, and that gives more noise from the talk. Gosh golly, funny, strange inside this rock with all these devils and demons for pals. And 10 minutes from now, who knows where I'll be, higher up or buried deep. Where, Pipkin? The boys jostled. The rain squalled and beat them so they almost tilted and fell off the ledge. Are you dead, Pipkin? No, not yet, said the cold rain in his mouth. Part of me in a hospital wing a long way off home. Part of me in that old Egyptian tomb, part of me in the grass in England, part of me here, part of me in a worse place. Where? I don't know. Oh, gosh, 1 minute I'm yelling laughs, and the next I'm scared. Now, just this very minute, I guess I know I'm scared. Help me, guys. Help me. Oh, please. So again, if you think of Pipkin as that spirit of boyhood, there's a sense of wonder that he's still retained. 1 minute is, oh, interesting, what'll happen? But then as you go, is that it's basically just puberty. It's you developing and growing into an adult, but there's that part of you that dies off, as the child. And, you have to fight to retain the good parts of it, of course. But it's wonderful to tie that up into a picture of what is Halloween. Halloween is the dying of one season and the getting ready for the life of another. And he likens that to the seasons of childhood, of life, that's what we celebrate at Halloween in one level, so the light within the darkness, that it's a transformation, it's a change. And I just like how Pipkin kind of reacts to that quite appropriately. And we learned that he is in a hospital. This is a spirit, but his body's in a hospital somewhere. We don't know what is going on yet, but there's the deal. All right, so now they have to, a lightning bolt struck out of the sky, it flashed blue and white. The entire cathedral shakes. The boys had to grab the demons. Pipkin's face was gone, so now he's no longer in the gargoyle. They're wondering what's going on now.
Knocked off by a lightning bolt.
Yeah,
Bradbury does not like this kid.
So they see the spirit. They saw something like a spirit smoke, a bloom of gunpowder blowing south and west. Mexico, Moundshroud, one of the few men in all of the world who knew how to utter the word. Mexico, I guess it would have been. Mexico, asked Tom. That last grand travel of this night, said Moundshroud, still savoring the syllables. Whistle, boys, scream like tigers, cry like panthers, shriek like carnivore. Scream, cry, shriek, reassemble the kite, lads, the kite of autumn. Paste back the fangs and fiery eyes and bloody talons. Yell the wind to sew it all together and ride us high and long and last. Brave, boys, brave. So remember that we talked about how there was a significance about how they travel to each place was linked in some way to where they go. And that they first start off in a circus. These old posters of a circus that are on this dilapidated barn. They tear the pieces off and the shreds, and Moundshroud fuses them together into this kite. And the kite's this like giant chimera. It's like, here's an eye of a creature, here's a ferocious fang, here's a piece of fur, here's a tuft of claw, that kind of thing. It's this big amalgamous piece. And that took them to Egypt, which was a place where the gods are an amalgamation of different animals and stuff like that. Exotic time that a circus sideshow might reference and stuff like that. But there were correlations there. So now we have. Oh, go ahead.
At least they didn't have to hold on to each other like a tail this time. They were actually able to hold on to the kite.
Exactly, and that's key. They're not having to steer it this time. They're able to just take it for the ride. So there's progression here going on, and the tail though this time is Moundshroud, and we're starting to get an idea who Moundshroud is here if you're just reading along. But if those of you who've read the portion for tonight, he's Death. He's the Grim Reaper. He's Death himself. Death steers the kite. Death steers this adventure, that you're on of life and danger and all that kind of thing. And Death steers them to Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead in Mexico. And stop me if you want to cover anything that I'm skipping over, but I'm just trying to get to the high points here. So they go to Mexico. They heard dogs barking in the night far below. They end up landing where they see some things first. On their way there, they do see beggars going out in beggars' night and everything like that, the parts of Halloween and whatnot in Europe, and the one dressed as a beggar, I don't know if it said his name or not, says, let's go over that way. And Moundshroud says, there's no time, we could be at this all night, but they've got to end in Mexico for Pipkin's sake and whatnot. And they get there, and they see a bunch of scenes swooping down. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to. They see all the cemeteries, the graveyards, filled with light.
Yeah, that's where they end up. On their way there, they tumble over a shore, mist hung over the waters. Far across the lake, they could see an unlit tomb yard, where, as of yet, no candles burning in it. Out of mist, a dugout canoe moved silently without oars, as if the tide touched it across the waters. A tall figure in a gray winding sheet stood motionless in one end of the boat. The boat nudged the grassy soft shore softly. The boys gasped, for as they could tell, only darkness was cupped inside the hood of the shrouded figure. Mr. Moundshroud? They knew it had to be him, but he said nothing. Only the faintest fifey of grin flickered within the cowl. A bony hand gestured. The boys tumbled into the boat. This is Charon, in the boat across the river there of Death. So they get that little image there too, going into death or going in from death to life, whatever. But they see, the ferryman, exactly, which is from Greek mythology, but is, in Irish, mythology, and all these kind of have it's the Grim Reaper, right? It's just the angel of death, one to carry you across that way, But they go from, as you said, Al, they go from the unlit, barren graveyard to this graveyard, these graveyards in Mexico, which are festive. This is their Day of the Dead is a place to remember the ones that have gone before and to celebrate. Bring flowers, bring candles, bring candies, and party in the graveyard, very obscure or odd to anybody who's not of that culture.
Well, it's a very beautiful concept when you
celebration.
Really
yeah, exactly. Boy, said Tom. Go ahead.
I just say it kind of keeps the spirits of those gone with you. You're remembering them. It's a day specifically for them, and all the memories you have of them.
Yeah, exactly. Because I like the correlation that Tom says. Tom said, at home we never go to the graveyard except maybe Memorial Day, once a year, and then at high noon, full of sun, no fun. Now this is fun. And you think about Memorial Day, a great holiday, to honor those, but it's a solemn event. It's not a celebration of life, as Dia de los Muertos says, which is also, I mean, it has some roots in Aztec, religions, everything like that. But when it's Catholicized, it is the celebration of the coming resurrection. The dead are still with you, even though they're not with you. The communion of saints from heaven are still there. They're still, there to celebrate with you and whatnot. So, Mexican Halloweens are better than ours, the boys say. So they see this man coming up a hill, who's now, of course, Moundshroud again. He's playing all these different roles. And he's selling candy skulls, which you can look up Dia de los Muertos and see a lot of the decorations. For some reason, it's like hipster chic now this year or something. I keep seeing all these decorations in Target with like Dia de los Muertos decorations, but the skulls with the like little tassels and stuff like that. But you'll probably recognize some of the designs if you look it up if you don't know. But the candy skulls are a big thing. I mean, lots of candy, sugared. I like that they see a little candied grave site. Remember that little candied miniature that's on the grave? And the priest is there. He's got like a walnut for a head. Like everything's edible. I like that aspect of it. But they end up getting skulls with their names on them. So they find the skulls that have their names on them, and they're supposed to eat those skulls. And we'll come back and they'll eat some more skulls here in a second. But they're supposed to eat those skulls. And that's kind of like a picture accepting the idea of your own death. That name. There's something profound about eating something with your name on it. Consuming it, ending it. You're accepting that idea that you will die one day.
Mm-hmm. Hills on the square, buy and eat, chew your name, what a treat.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The song drifted down the hill. See the politicians buried in the news. Rest in peace beneath their names. Such is fame. I love that idea. Everyone's going to die. Your fame is fleeting. See the skeletons juggling, standing high on each other's shoulders, preaching sermons, wrestling, playing soccer. Little runners, little jumpers, little skeletons that leap about and fall. Did you ever dream that death could be whittled down so very small? I love that image because he's talking about the miniatures that they create, like little candy skeletons and stuff like that. But the idea of death, did you ever dream that the idea of death, the horrible, terrifying end of life, this enormous thing, the enormity of it, could be whittled down so small to be something that would be even celebrated because there's hope, there's light in the darkness,
and a sugary treat.
And they're sugary treats. So you wouldn't want that. Exactly. So suddenly they can't find Pip, though. Pipkin's sweet skull, but nowhere in all the explosions and dancing bones, the flying skulls, was there so much as one dust speck or whimper or shadow of Pip. Every place they've gone beforehand, they find Pipkin somewhere there, but Pipkin's not here. Brings us to chapter 19. This woman comes over the shoulder, twin scoops of mounded charcoals burning. A few little sparks died out and so forth. Two thought, Tom, the man in the box, yes, and the inside the box, yeah. So this woman with these charcoals, this picture of death here, the man, his fallen face, coffin at the top, walked. Was that Pipkin inside again? So they're carrying one of the coffins, out there. What do you think, lad? Asked Moundshroud. I don't know, cried Tom. But they all get kind of ticked off at this point. They're all a little upset. They're like,
they've had too much sugar.
They had too much sugar. But they're like, we've got to get home, don't we? What about Pipkin? Where is he? Is he alive or dead? Can we save him? Is he lost? Are we too late? What do we do? What? Cried everyone, and the same questions flew and burst from their mouths and welled in their eyes, and all took hold of Moundshroud as if to press the answer from him, yank it out of his elbows. What do we do? To save Pipkin, one last thing. Look up in this tree, and they see these piñatas. All in each of the piñata is decorated in the form of whatever one of the boys is dressed like. So there's a piñata skeleton, a piñata witch, a piñata ape man, and so forth. And he says, strike. You have to strike the piñata. There's also another picture of consuming the skulls with their names on them. In that striking, they're taken away again. The ricochet to the final alleys down the town. They banged and skipped like stones across the lake waters to land rolling in a jumble of knees. Now they end up at an actual barren graveyard here. The boys came to stand at the edge of a big black hole. Cat, stuttered Tom. Catacombs? Catacombs, Moundshroud pointed. Stairs led down into a dry, dusty earth. The boys swallowed hard. Is Pip down there? Go bring him up, boys. Is he alone down there? No, things are with him. Things. Who goes first? Not me. Silence. You know? So this is getting pretty creepy. I think this is the creepiest scene in the book.
Definitely.
But I think it's pretty profound. Definitely, yeah.
Because up until now, it's all been like, kind of light and adventure, and now we're getting serious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what do they see lining the walls? They end up seeing Pipkin crying at the end down there. But what lines the walls between them? What's the gauntlet made of?
Oh, it's like like smiles and teeth and
yeah,
it's like
mummies. Yeah, mummies, exactly. Skulls, mummies, dead bodies are there.
Yeah, things
exactly.
Because I was reading, it's like from each step down was a billion miles lost from a light. The bed's a good candlelight, mothers' voices and fathers' pipe smoke. They were getting farther and farther away from life. Mm-hmm. They were down there going into the dead.
Exactly. And I like the idea of the catacombs. Oh boy, said Tom, all those poor people, I heard of them. Their folks couldn't pay the rent on their graves, so the gravedigger dug up these people and put them down here. The earth is so dry it makes mummies out of them, and look, see how they're dressed. And you get all these peasants, basically. Their bodies have been taken up because their families couldn't pay the rent on their graves. They're just buried in this unnamed mass, mass grave. And that they just came from the Day of the Dead, where individual family members who have passed on are honored and celebrated and remembered. And now they come to this catacomb where there's no memory of these poor people. They don't even have a gravestone. They're just lumped in there together, So a big juxtaposition there. Then they hear Pipkin crying. He's crying at the end of that gauntlet of these mummies there. Is that you? And they realize, Pipkin, for crying, what are you doing there? I don't know. Come out. I can't. I'm afraid. But Pip, if you stay there, Tom paused. Pip, he thought, if they there, you stay forever. You stay with all of the silence and the lonely ones. You stand in the long line and tourists come and look at you and buy tickets to look at you some more. Pip, said Ralph behind his mask, you got to come out. I can't, Pip sobbed. They won't let me. They? But they knew he meant the long line of mummies. In order to get out, he would have to run the gauntlet between the nightmares, the mysteries, the dreadful ones, the dyers, and the haunts. They can't stop you, Pip. Pip said, oh, yes, they can. Can, said echoes deep in the catacomb. That's creepy. That's pretty creepy. Now, why would these mummies want to stop Pipkin? Because they weren't remembered. No one pursued them like people pursued Pipkin, right? There's a sense of justice here, of life and death. Why should one be saved and others be, not be spared and be forgotten and whatnot? There's a sense of moral justice, and we're getting at the idea in the context of a children's story, in a way that children can understand it. But there's no rhyme or reason to death. There's no fairness about death. I mean, a baby dies, an old man dies. Where's the justice in that? Death isn't fair. But the living can do things. They can do certain things to remember, as we see with the Dia de los Muertos, but to even protect life, to even prolong life in certain ways. And we'll see that here. So here, boys, save him with this, Mounshroud says. Mounshroud reached into his dark cloak and brought forth a familiar white sugar candy skull, across the brow of which was written Pipkin. So here's Pipkin's candy skull. They saw all of their own. They ate their own. They see Pipkin's here. Mounshroud says, save Pipkin, lads. Strike a bargain. With who? With me and others unnamed, because he's death, right? Here, break this skull. Break this skull. So it's this. Break this skull into 8 delicious bits, boys. Hand them around. P for you, Tom, and I for you, Ralph, and half of the other. He divides them all up. He's got this this candy skull. He breaks it into 8 pieces and then hands it out to them. What is that? Does that remind you of anything, Al? As a Catholic, it should.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, that part. Yeah. The communion.
Yeah, it's the Eucharist right there. No, it's not the actual Eucharist. It's just a candy skull. But there's a picture of it because they're striking a deal with death. And you thought it was pretty creepy, I think, of what they have to do to bring people back.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, they basically give up a year of their own life.
Mm-hmm.
Take it from the end of their life. If they were going to live to 60, then 59 is as far as they're going to go.
Yeah.
That's kind of morbid.
It is morbid, and that's where the little kind of horror-ish kind of thing comes in for this book. But
it's a very cool concept. It's like a cruel thing to do to these 8 kids.
Well, there's a lesson in it, I think, and they're, as you said, they're not told when they might die. They're just told that whenever they do, it'll be a year earlier than when they would have.
Earlier than they would have, yeah.
If they each give a year to Pipkin, then he can be brought back. And then in order to seal this deal, once they all agree, they have to take that piece of the skull that's been broken for them and then chew it, eat it, swallow it, consume it. And that little image of Eucharist there. So in the Catholic Eucharist, the idea of eating the body of Christ is you're eating life within you. You're taking that, because Jesus says in the Bible, unless you eat my flesh or drink my blood, you have no life within you. So there's that idea. And it literally, even though it's not literal Eucharist there, it's a picture of it, because in eating that, they're taking their own life, 1 year of their own life within that and giving it to somebody. It's a sacrifice being made there. So you've got this subtle imagery of it there, which is really beautiful.
But I mean, like I said, so far it's been with Mountroud. He's kind of been a darker figure, but an almost playful figure.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of creepy, but kind of in a fun way. But now he gets down to what he actually is, the brass tacks, if you want to say. When he goes, there, I see you mean it. Well, then, will you each give 1 year from the end of your life, boys? What, said Tom? I mean it, boys. 1 year, one precious year from the far burned candle end of your life. With 1 year apiece, you can ransom dead Pipkin. That's a creepy thing for him to say to these kids.
Well, it is, like you said, he's getting to the hard truth of it. You can only color up and put, a mask on death with so much before you get down to the fact that no, death is death in the end.
And he's showing up because the deal is being made with him. You're ransoming him. It's like, he's mine, and if you want him back, you have to give me a year.
Yeah.
That's like making a deal with the devil kind of thing here.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, you know what I mean. Not literally, but figuratively.
I think what this is a picture of is it's actually quite beautiful. Brotherly love, right? This is their greater love hath no man than he who would lay down his life for another, and they're doing that. They're each doing that, laying down a year. Now, what that's a picture of, I think, is that when you live for others, when you care for others, when you invest your life into others, you do pour some of your life into them. Metaphorically, you give your time, you give the time of your life to others who might need care in your life that you love, others who might need just the stress of looking after them. They talk about the gray hairs being a father.
Don't have to tell me, man.
Yeah, exactly. So that and then that quite literally can end your quicken your death. I mean, stress kills, right? But you do give your life for others when you invest it, and when you do live for others, when you do lay that down. So I think the whole 1 year from the edge of their life is kind of a concrete way to put that concept in a children's story. And it's supposed to be creepy, as you said. It is that creepy-ish. It's supposed to be, because it's a Halloween story. You should have that.
I can't say no. It's great. It's great as hell. I'm just saying it is dark. I mean, there's something to be there's definitely something to be appreciated about it. It's just so well written. How he does it, but wow, boy, is it Mountroud totally revealing himself.
Revealing himself as the hard truth of death. He's not evil or not angry, but he is what he is.
Time for kites is done, boys. Time to grow up.
Grow up, exactly. And I like how they say this. So he's asking them who will do it, and he's telling them that they the math of the life. If you're this age, and then you'll die at this age, and the sums were very fast indeed, adding them up. There was no question, though. They knew that years from now they might doubt this dreadful haste. Yet what else could they do? only swim out from shore and save the drowning boy before he sank a last time into a frightening dust. Me, said Tom, I'll give a year. And me, said Ralph. I'm in, said Henry Hank. And me, said all the rest. Do you know what you pledge, boys? Do you love Pipkin then? Yes, yes. So be it, boys. Chew and eat, lads. Eat and chew. They pop and that's the Greek for take and eat. This is my body broken for you is meant to chew. It's the one that, if you chew the flesh, there's the idea of a breaking of the flesh, in your mouth. They chewed, they ate. Swallow darkness, boys. Give up your year. They swallowed hard, so hard that their eyes shone bright and their ears banged and their hearts beat. They felt something like a cage of birds let out of their chests and bodies and flying off, invisible. They saw but did not see the year they gave as gifts wing off round the world to settle somewhere in a good payment for strange debts. I love that line.
Mm-hmm.
They heard the yell, here, and then I, and then come. Bang, bang, bang. The three words, the three sounds of shoes hitting stone. And Pipkin runs out. He runs down the gauntlet. They're cheering, they're thrilling, but he runs so fast, he runs right past them. Doesn't even stop. And they're like, where did he go? Where did he go? And Mounshroud rightly says, I think a child who's been through what Pipkin's been through tonight is pretty terrified. Where do you go when you're terrified? You run home. You run back. Because this is a spirit, it has to go back to his body anyway, right? So he said, let's go see. So they're going to go back now. They're going to go back to their hometown. And where they end up is going back to the house there, Mounshroud, that old dilapidated haunted house, that is next to the Halloween tree. They arrive there. I like the way they land. Did you think that was pretty interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, they land on the roof and they take a slide down this massive staircase. And as though to recapitulate, kind of like to recap all the lessons they learned that night, each one in Mounshroud says, jump off the staircase on the landing that you think befits your costume. So the ape man goes all the way to the basement because we started with the ape man and, the cavemen, learning fire and learning light within darkness and stuff like that. The Egyptian mummy is a little bit higher and so forth. And, Tom Skeleton's there on the top, is the Dia de los Muertos skeleton. And it all adds up. 4,000 years ago, 100. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I do like Crash hackles Nibbly with his scythe, somehow still flashing in his hands, hit and almost rolled himself to mincemeat on the second floor where the shadow of Samhain, Druid god of the dead, raised up his scythe far above the chamber wall. This is why you buy those plastic things at the dollar store. Instead of having a real one.
Don't take a real one out there.
Don't take a real one, you're going to roll yourself into mincemeat.
Yeah. This is kind of a little lengthy read, but I want to read this three paragraphs here because this kind of sums up the lesson that he's giving them of Halloween, everything he's taught them. Night and day, summer and winter, boys, seed time and harvest, life and death. That's what Halloween is, all rolled up in one. Noon and midnight, being born boys, rolling over, playing dead like dogs, lads, and getting up again, barking, racing through thousands of years of death each day and each night. Halloween, boys, every night, every single night, dark and fearful until at last you made it in hidden cities and towns and had some rest and could get your breath. And you began to live longer and have more time and space out the deaths, the put away fear, and at last have only special days in each year when you thought of night and dawn and spring and autumn, of being born and being dead. And it all adds up. 4,000 years ago, 100 years ago, this year, one place or another, but the celebration's all the same. The Feast of Samhain, the time of the dead ones, All Souls, All Saints, the Day of the Dead, El Dia de los Muertos, All Hallows, Halloween. And of course, we talked about before how Halloween, that name comes from All Hallows Eve, which is the night before All Hallows Day or All Souls Day, in the Catholic Church feast day there. So, and the boys get it, they get it. But did they save Pipkin? They want to know this, And as a reader, you want to know too, right? At this point, you were pretty sure they'd saved him, or what did you think was going to happen at the end there?
Oh, I thought he was going to be. I thought he was going to be fine. I knew there was going to be this big happy reunion. I mean, they each gave him a year, and death, though a scary figure in most pantheon, in most beliefs, always is very honorable.
Mm-hmm.
You give it, he's got it.
Yeah.
So you make the deal, and he keeps the deal.
Unless it's Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Best 2 out of 3.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You have sank my battleship. Sorry. I'm cracking myself up.
My, what a great game. If they ever did a live action version, William Sadler is Miles Shroud.
Oh yeah, there you go. Definitely. So they go to Pipkin's house and they see that it's still not lit up. It's really late at this point. It's like, was it 1 a.m. or midnight or something like that? But one of them goes and they're brave, and Tom decides to go and knock on the door to find out what happened to his friend, And I like the fact that we don't go in the house with Tom. We don't see any adults in this book outside of the visions of Mountshroud. It's kind of like Charlie Brown. The adults are just a different language. We're stuck in the children's perspective here. So Tom goes in, and then he comes out a little while later smiling, and he tells them it was appendicitis. They took him to the hospital. There was a rough time. It looked like he might, go one way or the other, but he's fine now. He's just fine. He'll be home probably the next day or whatever, or whatever. So they caught it just in time. And the idea, and then they of course they're all relieved. They know they saved their friend. But I like this last little act of kindness. And this is which I think is cool. So if the story is about accepting and celebrating the life within death, accepting death and celebrating life in spite of death, and then you take the element of a death of boyhood, of growing up to that. I like the fact that they've come along the other side of this lesson, and yet they still decide they don't want Pipkin to come home and see a Halloween cheerless house. So they go get all of these jack-o'-lanterns and line up his porch with it, these lights, from the jack-o'-lantern, and they want that for him to come home to. It is that idea of remembering, and as we remember the ones who've passed, we should remember our past selves that have passed too, in our childhoods and stuff like that, which is so cool. So I like that aspect.
Yeah.
Then they start going to bed, turning in one by one, going to their house, right? And I think, was it you said something about the way they go? They as each one goes to their porch and steps inside, they look towards, they kind of wave to Mountshroud, still standing on the roof of the house up there, and then the jack-o'-lantern on the Halloween tree that's shaped like whatever they were dressed as goes out. The light goes out, for the Halloween. Until of course Tom has his last moment. He's the last to go in, and they have this little mental conversation, which I really love, and I want to read this. The mummy stepped into his house and shut his door. A pumpkin with the face of a mummy extinguished its light. And finally, the last boy in all town remaining alone on his veranda, Tom Skelton, and his skull and bones, hating to go in, wanting to wring the last dear drop from his favorite holiday in all the year, sent his thoughts on the night air toward the strange house beyond the ravine. Mr. Mountshroud, who are you? And Mr. Mountshroud, way up there on the roof, sent his thoughts back. I think you know, boy. I think you know. Will we meet again, Mr. Mountshroud? Many years from now, yes. I'll come for you. And a last thought from Tom. Oh, Mr. Mountshroud, will we ever stop being afraid of nights and death? And the thought returned. When you reach the stars, boy, yes, and live there forever, all the fears will go, and death himself will die. All right, now, Bradbury is always very solidly in Christian understanding of mythos, even though he never said himself definitely if it was definitely Christian or not. He grew up with it. He's always, referencing the Bible and stuff like that. But the idea of reaching the stars and when death itself is dead, I mean, that's a very biblical idea. Tom listened hard and waved quietly. Mr. Mountshroud, far off, lifted his hand. Click, Tom's front door went shut. His pumpkin like a skull on the vast tree sneezed and went dark. The wind stirred the great Halloween tree, which was now empty of all light, save one pumpkin at the very top, a pumpkin with Mr. Mountshroud's eyes and face. At the top of the house, Mr. Mountshroud leaned out, took a breath, blew. His candle and his pumpkin head on the tree fluttered, died. Miraculously, smoke curled out of his own mouth, his nose, his ears, his eyes, as if the soul had been extinguished within his lungs at that very moment. The sweet pumpkin gave up its incensed ghost. He sank down into his house. The roof trap door closed. The wind came by. It rocked all the dark smoking pumpkins on the vast and beautiful Halloween tree. The wind seized 1,000 dark leaves and blew them up over the sky and down over the earth toward the sun that must surely rise. Like the town, the tree turned off its embered smiles and slept. At 2 a.m, the wind came back for more leaves. The idea the morning did come, so that's the idea. And then that incarnation of Mr. Moundshroud dies, because he's death personified. He's going to go in and be another incarnation later and stuff like that. So I just love that picture. And I love the language, that ending of it, the poetic.
Yeah, the whole book is very poetic in nature.
It is, and you can tell that it's written for children who are a little bit older, because something like Dr. Seuss is obviously very poetic to younger children. The rhymes, sing-songy rhymes and stuff like that for them. Mm-hmm. This one's for older children, but the poetry of it has to be altered a bit, and it is beautifully. I think it's really great how it looks there. So that brings us to the close.
Yeah, but it was like got very heavy there with the whole deal with death.
Well, I mean, if you're used to old stories and old fairy tales, they do. You have to get heavy. There is a heavy moment, unless it's just going to be a kiddified, story these days or whatever, that there's no moral or no lesson. I mean, stories are there to teach you hard truths. And as children,
it's a great thing, Bob. I'm still wondering about those kids say, the 13, 14-year-old picks up this book, starts reading, and like, oh, wow, this is cool. Wow. And then gets to the heart of the matter. That's like a blow. That's like, whoa.
That really got you, didn't it?
Like I said, I thought it was awesome, but I'm just like, wow, I didn't expect it. It subverted expectations for me.
Well, this isn't Disney, this is.
But thinking about it, when you read it from the same guy who did Something Wicked This Way Comes, there's a lot of that dark nature going on. So, but just the thought of, well, I have to ask, Professor, would you give a year for me?
It'd have to be a really good candy skull, but
my skull would be extra sweet.
Deal then. Okay. I'll give a year.
I will too. Me.
And that's the idea that of a good fairy tale or a good children's story. You have to let them know that darkness is out there. Let them. Who was it? Was it C.S. Lewis? I think children should know that there are dragons. They should believe in dragons so that they can believe in the knights who can slay dragons. And it's that concept, I'm paraphrasing, but it's that concept that don't pretend, don't just give them nothing but fairy goodness and nothing but super happy lives with no real darkness out there. Let them know that darkness exists in the world, because they're going to find it on their own one day. And when they find it, if you haven't given them stories in which heroes overcame it, then you haven't prepared them for it, or came to terms with it or something like that, so. Yeah, beautiful story. I think it's great for Halloween. I really do think he achieved what he set out to, which is like a Christmas Carol for Halloween. It's not as well known or beloved, or of course, like that, but I think it serves the purpose if you accept it on its terms and everything like that. So,
yeah, I'm wondering.
Really good stuff.
I am wondering why it's not more popular. I
don't know. I think there's a dumbing down in our culture, where children today.
You think? I know there's a dumbing down in our culture.
Oh, yeah. But like when it was written, I mean, kids at that time, I mean, even in the book, that they're 12 years old and they go to Egypt and they remember, oh, yeah, these are hieroglyphs. They know these certain things. Yeah. Kids today don't know anything about that. They're too busy just learning whatever they can do to do the standardized tests so they can get the funding at the school. I mean, that's all they know. They don't know anything about this.
Don't even get me started on standardized tests, man.
Yeah, exactly. So there's this loss of knowledge, especially about history, about culture, about art.
Oh, yeah.
Who gets the best math scores? That's all anybody cares about, these days and whatnot. So it's so I think that the target audience for this book is no longer educated enough to appreciate it. Unfortunately, there are of course exclusions. I mean, we can certainly maybe even in the chat have been talking about reading it to your children or whatever. So I mean, sure there are exceptions, of course, but yeah. So that's it for Halloween Tree book-wise. But like I said, we will look at the animated version on Tuesday, which is a lot of fun. There are changes made because that one came out in 90, didn't it? Or I think it was it 1990 or something like that? Or
not sure actually.
Let me look that up as long as I'm here.
But yeah,
because the book was published in like 1973.
Yeah, I watched it. It was pretty cool. Like I said, it's different. There's some changes, but it's a decent adaptation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, Nimoy. What do you expect?
Exactly. Yeah, I'll share some images from it. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and I'm looking forward to it. There we go. There's some fan art. It looks like the Halloween tree. Leonard Nimoy does the voice for Malmshroud. Ray Bradbury himself narrates, but you got Tom Skelton there as a skeleton. They changed the witch Henry Hank to a girl, which I think kind of makes sense because what little boy in the 90s dresses up as a witch? A wizard, sure, but a witch, and that was kind of an older thing. There's the mummy. There's Henry Hank there's the boy's the gargoyle and stuff. So, yeah, it's really good. Halloween tree from
because they trimmed down the number of kids too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Bradbury had so many kids in the book that he only named certain ones. He didn't even name all the kids that were there. But they had to have them, enough to reference each place they went and stuff like that. So
right, and that's really pretty much who they kept in.
Yeah. So there we go. So that's going on Tuesday. But lest we get ahead of ourselves, checking with the chat there. Jedi Master Zootopia says, thanks for doing this book. I never read it and really enjoyed it. Cool. I'm glad you did. I'm glad, hopefully you had a good time reading it. And yeah, some people in the chat, Green Lion Girl is mentioning 93. Yeah, 90.
Yeah, I will say you're doing these book clubs and having me in it gets me reading, and it's something I really had gotten away from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's easy to get away from reading when you got other things going on in your life. If it's not something that you love and do by habit, But I always tell my students, you read, first of all, read what you're interested in. I mean, you have to read certain things for school, but don't be shamed because you like reading romance novels or sports stories or whatever. That's where you start. You read what you're interested in. You can't just pick up, I need to read this because it's a classic piece of literature and I need to have read it. Well, if that's the only reason you're picking it up, you'll never get through it. You'll never continue. Or if you do, you'll just force yourself to read the words and never retain anything, So read what you love and then that'll grow naturally. But then also read in whichever manner you need to. If you can only read very, very slowly, very little bit at a time, then do that. If audiobooks help you at first, then do that, Yep. Do what you need to. It's stop trying to. It just drives me crazy when teachers or societies like, no, thou must read. Thou must set aside 2 hours per day and not touch thy phone and read every word in Shakespeare.
Sit in thy reading room in thy wingback chair and
exactly, yeah. So
have a cup of tea next to thee.
So this is Thursday. Tomorrow, Friday. What's going on tomorrow?
Tomorrow at 9 p.m. special time. The Fan Man is having some Halloween family fun, so he's has once more thrown the controls of Friday night to me. So tomorrow at 9 o'clock on my channel, Big Al Presents, we will be doing a rewatch of 2010's The Wolfman, starring Benicio del Toro. Watched it the other day. It is literally 10 times better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
and I thought it was going to be really good. And joining me, because I am starting an hour later, will be Professor Geek.
You think I'm going to be there? No, of course I'll be there.
That's why it's starting at 9.
Yeah, I've got to drop off Alyssa, so I'll just be skating in right about time, but I'll be there.
I will there, and if we'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
but it's very good. So, I'm looking forward to the compare contrast of the two, and I know there's still a lot of like archetypal information that you can bequeath upon people. So I'm glad you're joining me.
Yeah. I'm looking right now to see if it's streaming anywhere. Did you look and check that out?
No, I didn't actually.
You can rent it in all the usual places. What version are you going to look at? Because Amazon Prime has an unrated version.
That is the one I believe I have. It's an extended edition. It's the one that has Max von Sydow scene that was cut from the theatrical version. So this is an extended version.
I've actually never seen the unrated version, so this will be interesting.
It's the one I have is like 1 hour and 54 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what mine is. So if yours around that, then you're good.
The unrated is 1 hour and 59 on Amazon.
I saw that. I don't know.
They pack some like previews and stuff like that in sometimes and stuff. So.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a compression thing, and we'll get through it. It's it'll be fine. But it's real good. It's got some interesting changes from the original, and not all bad. I think. I mean, like I said, the original still, of course, will always be the definitive, but this was a darn fine movie. Yeah, and Emily Blunt, not ugly. We did that the other. Well, I get what the thing. Love interest. Yeah, she plays Gwen Conliffe, the Evelyn Anchor's character, and we were talking the other night when we were doing Bram Stoker's Dracula, and we were saying, and Daniel Harris like, I just like to put it out there, Winona Ryder. She's not ugly. So it's just kind of a thing. Nope, she's not ugly.
But it's more than that. It takes some really cool turns and everything like that. It's good.
Yeah, it's a good film.
Yeah. Oh, apparently you can watch it on Amazon Prime if you have a Starz trial on Prime. Or
I think like Hulu may be the same way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these streaming services that if you have.
That's not the unrated version, though. You do have to pay for the unrated version or the extended version.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, try to find it. If not, we'll work ourselves through it.
Yep. So that's Friday. Saturday. What's going on Saturday night? That is
Saturday night on Troy Pacelli. We're doing Shaun of the Dead. Yeah,
Shaun of the Dead. That's right.
Yeah, he was originally going to do Hellraiser 3, and even he didn't feel like doing it, so he put up an option, and by landslide, pretty much, Shaun of the Dead won out over, I think it was Waxwork.
Yeah, something like that.
I think it was one. So yeah, we'll be doing Shaun of the Dead, which is a really funny film. So it is like Troy said, getting a little zombie in, a little zombification.
Yeah. So that's Saturday. Sunday night there will be Mr. Matchstick stream and of course Study Hall on Age of Boomers channel.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all that's going on Sunday. I don't know when Wolf 10 Media is doing something else, but check Wolf 10 Media's channel. He does do some. He's been doing some random during the day.
He did. Yeah, he did something today, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, earlier today. And then Monday night will be our Monday Night Muse, gracing us again with a topic is yet to be determined, I believe, but we'll be there. Monday Night Muse 9:30. No topic decided yet. I'm juggling a few ideas. Cool, excellent. And then Tuesday back here for our Halloween Tree rewatch. So the animated version. So that'll be fun. Wednesday is now that's the night. That's the morning for Second Cup Cafes now. Wednesday, right?
Right. 11 o'clock Eastern. Second Cup Cafe is now once a week on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm. So you might think, what are we doing on Thursday night then? Since Thursday nights have been the book studies,
but also Wednesday night on Soundtracks with the Birdman channel. They are doing the 1979 Frank Langella's Dracula.
Oh, interesting.
Rewatch.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, another Dracula going on.
And our very own Green Lion Girl will be doing she had technical difficulties this last week, unfortunately, so that didn't work out. But she will be returning this week with the much anticipated Friday the 13th, the cabin adventure or whatever there. So yeah, so that's gonna be hard to choose for people one way or the other which one to go. Virtual cabin, yeah. So there's Wednesday. Thursday, since we're not doing the book study, we're not going to read another book just for one night there before Halloween. I wanted to do something Halloween related. So we're going to open up, or I'm going to open up talking about, probably do it during the pre-show, talk about the short story of Sleepy Hollow, Washington Irving's, and talk about Washington Irving as a writer a little bit and what he did for American literature and whatnot. And if
you don't have the book, it's all over the internet.
Yeah, it's public domain.
Yeah, it's public domain. It's everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can even find really good Audible readings of it on YouTube. Just look up readings of it.
That's what I'm going to do sometime this weekend.
Yeah. But then at around 10ish, though, we're going to go ahead and watch, or maybe we might start the whole thing at 10. I don't know. Something anyway. The usual times for Thursday, but we're going to rewatch Legend of Sleepy Hollow. So the Disney version, which is so much fun. It's the second half of the Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. If you have Disney Plus, or you can find it somewhere else out there. But it's really good. It's amazing. Bing Crosby, that wonderful narration, does the songs and everything like that. It's so cool. It's so cool. So that's Thursday night. So that's the week that takes us to our week round.
Still one of not only one of the best adaptations of it, still terrifying. I just love the imagery in it.
It does have some not horrifying, but there's some scary things for a kid at the end. The headless horseman is chasing him.
Flaming pumpkin, and that's so cool stuff.
Yeah, very iconic, very imagery, and I love. It's one of my favorite. It's on my Halloween playlist. The song that Bing Crosby singing it, but in Brom Bones's character about beware, beware if you go out riding past, for the headless horseman will come and everything like that. It's so good. Let me see if I can find it. I'll drop a link or something.
That's where Ichabod's trying to eat.
Yeah,
and Brom's telling the story and trying to scare him, but still, flirt with the girls.
Here it is. I'll drop the link in the chat. It's so good because Bing Crosby's wonderful voice. Ooh. And it's at the end. So don't watch it if you don't want to spoil it. But this is it's part of you can listen to it. It's part of my Halloween playlist each year. I love that. Brom. And some don't even wear their skin. Anyway, so that takes us through the week, and then we will more to come. So of course, I'm going to be switching gears and moving over to the Catholic Bible Geek channel for next month. So I've been putting out content. I've got another couple of video ideas I want to get down as well.
A
couple videos.
That review of the Gospels you got, that's a beautiful book.
Isn't it though? Yeah, the Word of Fire Bible. Yeah, it's really pretty. So excited about that. And we will be starting a Bible study on Thursday nights, the week right after Halloween, on the Catholic Bible Geek channel, going through the Book of John. And I will use that Bible, I think, as one of the resources, looking at as we go through. So I'll probably show some pictures from it and stuff like that. So it'll be good.
Very nice.
All right. Anything else from you, Al, before we wrap this up?
No, just like I said, please join me tomorrow night at 9:00. It's kind of a last minute deal. Like I said, the Fan Man's playing Daddy tomorrow night to celebrate his oldest daughter's birthday coming up. So that's what's going on. So yeah, Wolfman, if you've never seen the 2010 version and you think the original 1941 is kind of childish, watch the 2010, because this one's not. It's very, very intense, but very, very well done.
It's not gratuitous though. I haven't seen the unrated extended version, but it's not gratuitous, and it gets at some of the deeper themes that the first one was hinting at. So
great.
It's got a couple issues with it, still, but
there's a few story choices, but Anthony Hopkins is in it, and I can't think of his name. The guy who played Lord of the Rings, Hugo Weaving.
Hugo Weaving. Yeah, good. Arcade Fire's asking if I have my new PO box yet. Not yet. I will though. Actually, this week. I have to get that done this week. So I will post that on the Facebook group when I do. But appreciate you for asking. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Pre-show and book study and all, and lots of content to come for this Halloween season. So it's not over yet. Just getting geared up. But thanks for hanging out. And until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the stories you love.
Thanks for the year.